I snuck out, went to a payphone, called one of the elders and told him that she was drinking, and then she had to go to like an elder committee and they decided to disfellowship her. She actually took like every single item out of my room. I mean, every single item. My bed, my clothes, it was just carpet, the walls, the outside of my room. She put a big board over the window with nailed it in, and then on the door, like from the inside of the house by my bedroom door, she put a padlock on the outside of it. After 3 days, I saw this telephone pole that had a flyer on it with a number for this homeless shelter. I called it and they got me in there. Definitely as a kid, I thought that he was a direct descendant of the prophet.
Right.
And so I was just very keen to listen to him and learn from him. And I had really never been alone with a guy since I had started, wearing hijab. I wasn't pronouncing an Arabic letter correctly. He's just going to go ahead and touch my throat to show me we'll do the workaround. I'll just marry you quickly so that I can touch you and it won't be a sin. And I remembered, oh, this is a thing because he told us about this. So I went along with it. Almost immediately was like, you're my wife now. You know that wives can't say no to husbands. In my head, I was like, well, I know Islam is perfect and we followed all the Islamic rules and something bad is happening.
Yeah.
And he gave me that $1 after all, He bought me for $1 whole. So
it's disgusting.
Nothing bad happened.
Hey, my name is Shalise Ansola, and this is Cults to Consciousness, where we discuss leaving high-demand religions or organizations and finding healing and independence through awareness and true individual sovereignty. If you're only listening, you can come on over to YouTube, where you can like and subscribe, leave those words of encouragement for our guests. It means so much when you leave those comments. It really helps boost the algorithm as well and just helps everyone feel seen and appreciated. So today's guest, it's such an interesting story how I came across her, but I'll leave that for once I bring her on. But basically, she grew up on the West Coast of the United States, where she was initially Jehovah's Witness and then turned to Islam when she was in a homeless shelter. And we have a lot to talk about as far as clergy abuse and as far as being married at a very young age. She was married at 15, what that was like for her, how she was able to escape, and how she is doing now. So thank you so much for joining us, Layla.
Hi. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So the whole roundabout way that we came to be in contact with each other, I think is so cool. So I would love it if you would share with everybody how this happened.
I never talked about anything that happened to me for like 20 years. And then I found this channel and other ex-Muslims, and I just a few months ago started making videos on my channel, and I was like, it's okay, like I can do this because nobody follows me, so nobody will see them, and I can kind of like work my way into this, and it'll be years before anybody like really like sees this, and by that time I'll be used to talking about it. I made 4 videos, and then on my 5th video, I had like 30 subscribers at that time. And I talked about an issue that triggered people, and it ended up getting seen by like thousands of people. I have like, a few hundred mean comments. I came into your comment section and I was telling one of the other ex-Muslims who was talking about getting mean comments, basically that she's not alone, and, just trying to kind of like have some solidarity like in your comment section, like never thinking that you would ever see it. But I felt like it was like a safe place to talk, and you saw it, so that's what happened.
Yeah, you had said this video came at a perfect time. I'm paraphrasing, but it came at a perfect time because you were also receiving online bullying for sharing your story. And so I told Rachel, our research assistant, I was like, go find out what her story is and let me know. And oh my goodness, girl, you have such a wild ride of a story. And I've told you a million times already before we even started recording, I'm so sorry everything that you went through. It's a lot. It's so much to deal with, especially as a young child. And I know that talking about it can also be difficult. So I just wanted to thank you for coming on and sharing. And also I want to address, we are using an alias. Layla is a name that she chose, and I'll let you explain why. And she's wearing a mask to conceal her identity. So this is all very purposeful, and we just want to respect the privacy of Layla here. So do you want to explain why you chose that name as an alias?
It's kind of like an inside joke. I hadn't chosen like an ex-Muslim alias to make my videos. I was just not saying my name. On the last video, the one that kind of started like the bullying and all that kind of stuff, a lot of people were, I'm just wearing a normal outfit, and it really triggers some believers that I don't wear hijab anymore and they can't control what I'm wearing. They were calling me a lot of words that I don't want to repeat here.
They were calling you promiscuous or slutty or...
Yes, exactly. Sex worker, but the worst way of saying that, Layla, is in Arabic, it's supposed to be like a promiscuous name. So that's why I chose the name, because I was like, well, if you're going to call me that anyway, I might as well lean into it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty awesome. So, Layla, you are. All right, so let's get into your story. When you had told me on the phone, you're like, well, I started with my channel talking about when I was 14 or so, but I didn't even get into the early part. And you said that you were Jehovah's Witness. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like thing after thing after thing. So let's talk about your early childhood and what it was like living with your mother who was Jehovah's Witness and how all of that played out.
So my mother had me when she was a teenager, and she was a single parent at the beginning part of my life. She joined Jehovah's Witnesses when I was 2. And so my only memories that I have from my childhood were like, we were already in this. I don't have any memories before the age of 2. So that's just everything that I remember from my childhood. We were basically going to the Kingdom Hall like 3 days a week. We would go on Sundays, on Tuesdays, and on Thursdays. And then the days that we weren't at the it's a Kingdom Hall, but I'll just say church because it's easier to say. The days we weren't there, she was a pioneer, which is like a
proselytizer.
Yeah, who goes door to door like a certain number of hours. And a lot of the time I would go with her because she homeschooled me a lot. Like sometimes she would put me in school. Sometimes the schools would get suspicious of stuff. And so she would just take me out again and homeschool me. So I was mostly homeschooled. And so that means that I would be going with her, like doing all the witnessing and the door-to-door stuff. Once a year, there was like a convention, and we would go to that too. And that's really difficult to be like a small child and have to like be quiet, sit still. You're supposed to pay attention for like, 8 to 10 hours a day for like 2 to 3 days, these conventions that they would do yearly. I don't remember too much of being in the Kingdom Hall. It kind of blurs together. I remember what it was about, but I don't have like really specific memories of that. But I remember the conventions because they were so hard to kind of sit through. And I just was a very fidgety child, and I used to get in a lot of trouble for that. They very much teach like a really hardcore kind of like a spare the rod, spoil the child doctrine. My mother was definitely physically abusive, and she didn't think that she was abusive because that's what was being taught. The witnesses believe in that. And it's a very much like, you can't wear pants to meetings. Women are not allowed to have short hair. Men are not allowed to have long hair. Like it's a very, very gender
roles. Very typical gender rules.
Yeah, the gender rules are like very hardcore and like very, very enforced. You're not allowed to do anything androgynous. Like men are supposed to be like men, and women are supposed to be like women, and it's very like much enforced. The men are the leaders. The women are
submissive.
Yeah, be submissive to them. You're not allowed to mix with outsiders. Even during the times when I was at school, I would often just be sitting in the hallway because in the class they would be doing something like it was Thanksgiving or it was a classmate's birthday, and I wasn't allowed to participate in that. And so I would just have to sit out in the hallway until they were done with that activity. I was just kind of very used to only having interactions, friendships, or anything with people who were also witnesses. Mm-hmm. When I was younger, my mom was very following of the rules. She was doing everything. I never actually believed it. I actually never believed in God. I never chose to get baptized. I absorbed a lot of the sexism, and I absorbed a lot of things that I didn't really believe in just because it was around me and it was all I knew. But I wasn't a believer in that. And I think it was partially because my mother was so abusive, and this religion was something I associated with being forced to do by her. So I just was never like a big fan of it. I followed the rules. I didn't really have a choice, but I didn't believe them in my heart. I just didn't really believe in them. But it was also all I knew. So even though I didn't really believe in it, I didn't really have anything else to compare it to.
Yeah.
Just because we were very isolated, and everybody else that I knew through the Kingdom Hall. They were all my mom's friends within the group and their children.
So when did things start to really go off the rails with you and your mom?
She actually had sent me away with another witness lady who had just had a baby and was a long-haul truck driver. And I had never met this woman either, so it's like giving away child labor. She just sent me with her for like a couple of months to live in the truck with her and help her take care of the baby while she was driving. And I had never really been around an infant before, so I really wasn't good at it. And the lady was frustrated a lot because I wasn't a very good babysitter.
Oh my God. How old were you?
I was like 12.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, I'm like sleeping on the floor of this truck wrapped around like a big gear shift thing, just trying to take care of a baby. When I came back from that, she had gotten a divorce. She was married. Her husband that she married when I was young, he was a witness as well. And then they had gotten a divorce, and that's when she sent me away. When I came back, she had started drinking a lot and going out and bringing guys home. She would come into my room and wake me up in the middle of the night with some random guy. And then a few of them she ended up dating. My mother has very serious mental health issues. And so she would sometimes say and do things that she wouldn't either remember, or later she would say something else. And I didn't get that at the time. I was just always very confused because I'd be like, well, you told me to do this. I'm doing it. Now you're mad at me. It made me really resentful because I thought she was doing it on purpose. Now that I'm older, I realize it might not have been on purpose. But as a kid, I thought like, you're doing this on purpose. Like, you're telling me to do this. And then when I do it, you're getting mad at me for it. And like, I thought she knew that. It was very confusing. So one of the things she had told me to do was that if she said she had a problem with alcohol and if she ever started drinking again, I should tell the elders. And so I did. I snuck out, went to a payphone, called one of the elders and told him that she was drinking. And then she had to go to like an elder committee, and they decided to disfellowship her. When she got disfellowshipped, that's when she was in the church, at least some of the families she was friends with they were church members, but they were pretty normal as far as I could see. They weren't abusing their kids, and they weren't like my mother really, because it was just her and I after she got the divorce. I wasn't in school, so there wasn't anybody around to kind of
monitor
to see what was happening, or so when she was still going, at least there was that. And then when she got disfellowshipped, it was like there was nobody around to see anything or know anything. And so she actually took like every single item out of my room. I mean, every single item, my bed, my clothes, it was just carpet, the walls, and that's it. And she put everything in a huge pile in the living room, and she boarded up a window, the outside of my room. She put a big board over the window, nailed it in, and then on the door, like from the inside of the house by my bedroom door, she put a padlock on the outside of it. She thought that I was sneaking out. I wasn't sneaking out, but she had decided that I was, and so she cut my hair off. Like, she got on top of me, and she had a 6-pack of beer, and she said she poured it down my throat.
What?
And she said it was because, she said it was because she thought I was drinking, or I was gonna drink or something like that. But I think it was because I told the elders that she was drinking. That's what I think. I mean, I can't prove that, but that's my opinion. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty bad. It had gotten pretty bad. And one of the neighbors actually called CPS because they saw the board on the outside of the window. CPS came and they took me to this office, and they asked me what I wanted to happen. And I said that I really wanted to be put in foster care. And they said that they were going to work on that. And they sent me back with her, but they were like, they were going to come for like these mandatory visits. And the CPS worker basically told me like, we're going to get you in foster care because that's what you want. And this is a pretty bad situation. It was at least dark outside by the time we got home. And she was just like, take your coat off, give me your backpack, get out. It was raining too. So for like 3 days, I was just walking around by myself. I didn't have my backpack, so I didn't have anybody's phone number. I couldn't call anybody. I didn't have my jacket. And After 3 days, I saw this telephone pole that had a flyer on it with a number for this homeless shelter. I called it and they got me in there. It was a long-term program, so you had to work and have a job, pay rent, and you got your own little room with your own little bathroom. I was there for somewhere between like 5 and 7 months. I don't know exactly how long I was there.
That's a long time. Did CPS never come looking for you, or what happened with that?
Oh no, that homeless shelter was part of the state. It was really, really hard to get in there, like really hard, because it was a really nice place. Because I got a bed there, I didn't have to go to foster care.
Would you have preferred to go into foster care? Did you request to stay there?
No, I felt really lucky when I got there because it was, like I said, I didn't have to share a room with anybody. I had my own like little room with like a locking door. I had a little bathroom and the kitchen was like a shared space. They taught us life skills. I got to do a photography class, a catering course. I got my catering license, my food handler's permit.
Oh, wow.
I got to go to 2 hours of school every day, which for me, that was amazing because it was probably like one of the first times in my life that I was consistently getting education for sure. And I knew nobody was going to just like take me out. And I had a part-time job at a stationery store. It was a good thing that there was a therapist there. And I think that because of those therapy sessions that I did while I was there, I think that if I would have never did that, I don't think I would have ever left my ex-husband. It was because of that and learning about the cycle of abuse while I was there that I understood when it was getting too dangerous that I needed to leave or it wasn't going to go well for me.
How old were you at this point?
I was 14.
You're 14 and you could have a job?
Yeah.
Legally?
I got emancipated. I legally had to get emancipated because I wasn't old enough to be at the shelter and she wasn't allowing me to stay there. And so the caseworker, the people at the shelter, and my teacher from school all wrote letters to the judge and I was legally emancipated. And it's funny because me getting emancipated like that was really, really rare. They were like, there's no way this is going to go through. And then it did go through because of how problematic my mother was. And then later I have a half sister that I got to know like as an adult. And I found out that she was also taken away from my mother. My mother also lost custody of her, which is for where we were living, like women do not lose custody. It's just not a thing. So for her to have lost custody of me and then after I was gone to have another child and then lose custody of another child, it was validating to me, even though I hate that my sister suffered. But I was like, yeah, like she's actually as bad as I remember. Like it was actually that bad.
So after you left, she got pregnant again?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. So this is where you were introduced to Islam, right?
Yeah, but I don't actually remember how that happened.
Right.
Like I don't have very many memories from that time at all. I remember that we did a photography class, but I don't really have any memory of doing it. I just know it's something that I have in my mind that I know I did, but I don't really remember doing it.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things I know, but I don't actually have a very good memory of. Well, I have very few memories from my childhood, very few memories from this time. It makes everything like a big problem for me. It's why part of the reason it took me so long to talk is because there was so many things that I was like, I have a little bit of a memory. Like I have one puzzle piece, but all the other ones are missing. And then I finally when I decided I'm going to start talking, I was just like, you know what? All right, so you just won't talk about that stuff. Like if you don't have enough of a piece, you'll just leave that stuff out. But there's enough stuff that you do remember and you can just focus on that. And so, yeah, but it is a problem. And it's something that really bothers me that I don't have all of my memories. But
it's so hard. I'm not a licensed professional by any means, but from people that I talk to and my own experience, I know that it is a common thing to dissociate or for your brain to block out certain things so that it keeps you safe mentally. So I guess I just wanted to say that for the audience so that they know that is a common thing that occurs and you're not alone in that. So what happened after the homeless shelter?
So I remember my aunt and uncle being like, you shouldn't be living there. This is not a good thing with outsiders. You should definitely come and live with us. And they had 4 kids. And I feel like I might have been spending a lot of time there anyway. I might be getting confused and just thinking of the time after I lived there. I'm not sure. But in any case, I asked the people, like my caseworker and everything, and they were like, well, you're emancipated, so you can do whatever you want to do. We can't keep you here. And I was like, oh, well, that's great. So I was like, well, I'm going to go live with them. And they were like, well, we actually want to graduate you from the program. I should have graduated from the program when I was 18, but they said that I had done so well there and been non-problematic and stuff. So at the time when I left, they graduated me from the program. I was the youngest person that had ever graduated from the program. I don't know. I'm sure that there's probably been a younger person by now because this is 20 years ago, but I remember feeling proud of myself for that. And there was not a lot of things that I had to feel proud about. So the few things that there were, I think I still kind of remember them. I got to do like a speech and the mayor was there. And I don't actually remember giving this speech, but I remember being really nervous about it and then seeing pictures afterwards. And then I went to live with them. I don't remember how that happened, but I do remember being there. It was really good at first. Up until that point in my life, probably the best time that I had ever had. We spent a lot of time together as a family. We would go to the park and we would have barbecues and I did a lot of the cooking. It was a really nice time. Yeah, in the beginning.
Until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah. So let's talk about what that flip was like or how things started to shift or the environment that became essentially toxic for you.
Nobody forced me to be very religious. Like my mother forced me to do what she wanted, but nobody, my aunt and uncle, they weren't forcing me to do anything. They were encouraging of it and they were very supportive of it and they were very happy when I would do things. And so I'm sure subconsciously that made me, more eager because I wanted that acceptance. But there was nobody saying, you're going to do this or else. That was not a thing. I was doing these things on my own, not in a bubble, but I wasn't being forced. And the household was always very Islamically strict. Obviously, we prayed, we ate halal, we fasted for Ramadan. We didn't listen to music. If we were at a wedding or something like that and somebody started playing music, we would stand up and leave. And I really liked that at the time because I was still mad at my mother because I was like, she taught me all these things and then she just turned around and like stopped doing them and then still expected me to do them. And I never wanted to do them in the first place. So I had a bone to pick about that, like mentally in my head. I was like, well, these people have really strict rules, but like at least they follow them. Like they're not just like, oh, like you do this and then we'll say that this is correct and we'll just do something totally different. It was like, oh, you're telling me this is correct and you're living it. And so to me, I was like, well, it must be actually correct because it makes people do what they say instead of just saying something, doing something else. I liked that. I had come to a point because a guy had shown an interest in marrying me and they mentioned it to me and I was like, I don't want to do that. And they were like, oh, that's okay. But like, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to be a scholar. I was a Shia Muslim that we're taught very much to idolize Iran in all its forms. And there's a university in Iran. It's in Qom. It's in this city. It's where the strictest form of fundamentalist Shia Islam comes out of. And that's where I wanted to go because I thought, well, those are the people who are following it the way they're supposed to follow it. And therefore, that's the purest in the world, the most I could aim for. And so that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. I think real quick, it's important to note, and I only know this detail because of your videos, you were 15 and the guy who approached you to marry you was 30?
Yeah, he was in his 30s.
In his 30s.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how old he was, but he was something in his 30s.
Okay. And you had the reason with you to be like, no, I want to be a scholar. So they accepted that.
Yeah.
And then someone else approached them?
No, it was just that one guy. They were okay with that. I wasn't going to get married. I was going to be a scholar. Everything was fine. And they were like, well, if you want to be a scholar, we need to go to the masjid more. And so we started going there was 2 masjids that we went to. One was much more traditional and conservative. Almost all the people in that masjid, the truth of the matter is they weren't as educated. I don't think there was a college degree amongst them. And they were also very, very new to living in the West. I don't mean the West Coast, I mean America. It was a very new immigrant community. There's a handful of people in that community who had been here for a long time. They had all just brought their families and then everybody started growing. When there was another community that we went to, everybody was very educated. It was a much more progressive community. There was girls there that didn't even fully cover with hijab. They would put it like maybe here or something and just had a little bit of hair showing. And my aunt and uncle didn't like that. And every time we would leave there, they would always talk about, oh, they're wearing Hollywood hijab and whatever. But we still kept going there. And I liked it. Like, even I was very religious at the time, but I kind of, even then, even when I was religious and I wanted to be a scholar, I still thought it was cool. And I think it's because they had choice. And at the time, I still thought choice is a good thing. And I didn't really fully understand. I had never had my choice taken away within Islam. So to me, I was like, well, they're doing what they want to do. And, it was only after I ended up getting married and I experienced what it was like to not have choices or be forced to do things that I really understood. If I would have went to study at that university, it wouldn't have been good for me. And so I was glad that I didn't do that.
So how did you meet the guy that would end up becoming your husband?
That was in response to, I kind of have to go backwards to explain that. So we started going to these 2 mosques more because I wanted to be a scholar. My family had asked the Imam there if he would teach me, and he agreed to do that. And I didn't even know about it until it was actually on Eid. He told me that in front of everybody because he gave one gift out that year and he gave it to me. It was very embarrassing. When he gave me that gift, it was a pen, like a writing pen, a fancy one. When he gave me that, he said that he was going to start teaching me. He did. He moved into our house. He quit teaching all his classes at Islamic school just to focus on teaching me. He basically groomed my family. I didn't realize that at the time. I wouldn't realize that until years later when I learned about grooming. And then I was like, oh, wow, he didn't just groom me and them. He was really good at it. So good that I don't think that this is the only time he's done this.
Right.
There's that would be, if he was that good at grooming the very first time, well, wow. But I don't think so. There's part of what made me want to talk as well, because I think that if I do, maybe one day the other people, if I'm correct, that he's done the same thing too, will be able to find me, and then maybe, I don't know, we could do something about it. So
wow.
Anyway, that was a tangent. Sorry.
No, I know.
I'm neurodivergent, so sometimes I do tangents.
No, I think that was great because I know that we wanted to talk about this. So can you give some examples for those who aren't familiar or for those who are wondering what grooming looks like, especially with you and your family? What are some of the things that he would do to soften or to make it seem like it was nothing or innocent?
So basically, when he first moved in, I was never alone with him. We would always sit all together in the living room, everybody, the kids, everybody, my aunt and uncle, me, him, and we would eat dinner. And then after dinner, we would have tea and talk, and he would tell us these stories. And he was saying oh, in this other country, when families are riding the train and there's a single man who has to be in the train car with a family or with women that he's not related to in a way where you can't marry them, which is something called mehram. What'll happen is the youngest daughter, the youngest kid, will be married to that man, that single man, just for the duration of the train car ride, so that way, if the hair slips or shows or something like that, then it's not a sin. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Yeah.
Hold on. That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
So he's saying that the sin is seeing the mother's hair, not marrying the child.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Got it.
And that made perfect sense to all of us. We were like, oh, that's smart.
Because
it's a workaround.
Right, because for those who aren't familiar, that's a rule. That's a very strict rule within Islam. Of course, there are variances depending on where you are, but you're not supposed to be in the same room. You're not supposed to coexist, male and female, together unless you're related, if you can get married to them. So, holy cow. Okay. Continue. So
it was basically these stories that he was just telling us in just this normal conversation. And then once he told my aunt that we couldn't do our lessons at the dining room table anymore, because he said the kids were very loud and a distraction. They weren't loud, though. They weren't a distraction at all. And I didn't want to go down there. But I ended up having to go. And when we got down there, I was really uncomfortable because I'm not supposed to be alone with men. And I had really never been alone with a guy since I had started, wearing hijab. And so I was really awkward and I was really uncomfortable. And he was trying to make me feel better. He would sit on his bed and I would sit on a chair a little bit away. He was telling me that I wasn't doing something correctly. I wasn't pronouncing an Arabic letter correctly. And he said that he's just going to go ahead and touch my throat to show me what part of my throat I should be pronouncing this letter from. And I was like, you can't touch me. Like, that's like, what are you talking about? He was like, oh, well, we'll do the workaround. I'll just marry you quickly so that I can touch you and it won't be a sin. And I remembered, oh, this is a thing because he told us about this. And, he told my family about this.
He laid the groundwork so that you wouldn't think anything of it.
Yes, this is a thing. This is just a workaround, This is just what they do on the train. It's not a big deal. And so I was like, okay. And so he was like, marriage contract, gave me $1. $1.
Why would he need to give you $1? Can you explain that?
The woman has to have a dowry.
So he gave you $1.
$1.
Wow.
Yeah. And, that actually, it was because he said, I'll just give you $1 that I partially also believed that this wasn't a big deal because it was just like, oh, it's just for technicalities. He's just, it's just to make sure that everything is not a sin. It's not haram. So I went along with it. And as soon as he had finished doing that, he like almost immediately was like, you're my wife now. You know that wives can't say no to husbands.
Oh.
And he started abusing me. I don't know how much I can. I don't know how much I can.
However much you're comfortable with. You can say as little or as much as you'd like.
So he basically did every single thing you can do to a person without the one thing that would take away somebody's virginity.
Without penetration.
Yeah. Anything else you can think of, he did it.
Wow. I'm so sorry. So what's going through your mind? Because he clearly groomed you into thinking that this was okay, but there's, I'm sure, a part of you that's not feeling okay about it. And then at the same time thinking, well, this is good attention. Like maybe, did you enjoy the attention because of the validation that it provided you? I mean, all these things, and I'm just saying it because other survivors have told me that this was their thought process during the grooming situation. So I wondered what was going through your mind.
All the way up until the moment when the abuse started happening, yeah, I absolutely was so flattered. I was like, I had gone from this like really abusive home with my mother and a lot of neglect, a lot of abuse, physical and emotional. And, I was homeschooled, just a lot of isolation. And now I'm in this community of people who are kind and accepting. And I think that they love me and I love them. Yeah. And this is the leader of them. Also, I was always like a kind of like bookish, like kind of like nerdy kid. I haven't been able to make myself go back as an adult and listen to his lectures online, even though there's a lot of them, because I just can't hear his voice. I tried and I freaked out. As a kid, as a young person, I genuinely thought he was the smartest person I had ever heard speak. When he would talk, I was just like, he definitely had a gift for how do you say that word?
Proselytizing.
That's the one.
I know, it's a tricky one.
He had a real talent for that. And I hope that as an adult, if I listened to one of his lectures again, I would be like, no. But I don't know, because I have never been able to make myself do that. But definitely as a kid, I thought that he was a direct descendant of the prophet. Right. And so I was just very keen to listen to him and learn from him. But when the abuse started, I would just cry the whole time that it was happening. I would just be crying. I never said stop it or no because I didn't think I could, because in my head I was like, how did this happen? Because I never had a moment of being like, maybe Islam is wrong. In my head I was like, well, I know Islam is perfect and we followed all the Islamic rules and something bad is happening. Yeah. I knew that this was bad, and I also, in my head at the time, knew that Islam was perfect, and I could not find a way to like carry both of these things. Like, okay, we followed all the rules, but something bad is happening. And it took me years to like unpack that within my head. I kept thinking like there's been some kind of mistake. And then I thought, oh, well, maybe it's because I was trying to do a loophole. Maybe because doing a loophole is sketchy. I was going along with doing a loophole, and that's why this happened. Yeah. But then I was like, well, but there shouldn't be a loophole that can lead to like this, though. Like, this is definitely bad.
Yeah, I just have to quickly validate for you that because you just mentioned I never said stop or I didn't verbally say anything. I just have to put it out there, especially for anyone listening who this may have happened to as well. That doesn't matter. He was a grown ass man and you were a child, and he never should have done that to you. It doesn't matter if you never said no. And I feel like you know that, but I just have to verbally say that it was not okay and it was still non-consensual, even if you didn't say anything. It was absolutely wrong and he should have known better and done better.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, you're right, especially for anybody else that's listening. I do know that. And I don't know why I worded it that way.
No, I mean, it's okay. And of course, it's just like semantics, right? But I just wanted to make sure if anyone else was listening too, I just have to say that again because so many times, especially in just modern day culture, not even within high control groups, women are blamed for things. And they're like, well, did you say no? And it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard because if it's not an enthusiastic yes, it's a no. And to just make that even more, just to drive the point home even more, you were a child, you were still young, and you were in so many different power differentials, right? So first of all, he's a religious leader, so he has power over you spiritually in your eyes. Also, he's older than you, so he has the power over you as an elder. Also, he's a man, so he has power over you because of that. And he's living in your home. He's in your own home. And so there's just so many different ways that he used all of those things to his advantage to take advantage of a young girl. And so, yeah, I'm talking in circles now, but I'm just angry, Layla. Just mad. That never should have happened to you. So, wow. Okay. Where do you want to go from there? Sorry, I just took us off somewhere else.
No, I appreciate the anger. It took me a really long time to find my own, but yes, it is an angry inducing situation.
Yes.
So, yeah, so I essentially stopped talking for a few weeks. I don't know exactly how long it was, but it was a while. That's part of my neurodivergence. It's only happened to me a few times in my life, but when I'm like extremely overstimulated and like something really big is happening, I can kind of lose my ability to speak. So that situation with him doing that to me triggered me not being able to talk. And so my aunt noticed that, and I'm not talking anymore, and she kept asking me what's wrong. And it's not that I wouldn't say anything. It's like I literally couldn't say anything. And so one day I was down there with him, and my aunt made a tray of tea and like little cookies, and she just walked in. And she walked in on the abuse. And so then she knew about it. She took me out. And when my uncle came home, we went back and he kicked him out of the house. And I was so relieved in that moment because I was like, oh my God, he's gone now. Like, I don't have to, like, this isn't going to happen anymore. And then my aunt and my uncle talked about it for a while privately. And then they came back and told me, well, my aunt told me that I needed to tell her everything. And at that point in time, like, I was able to tell her everything. I think that once he was out of the house, once she knew, like, I don't know, like it changed something for me. And I told her everything. And part of what I had to tell her was that he had been buying me lingerie and making me wear it and taking pictures and making videos. And that was something that he was using to be blackmailing me, essentially, into not saying anything, which I was never going to say anything anyway because I was mortified at the whole situation. When I told them that, I think it played a big role in the decision that they took, which was that if anybody would ever see these things, our whole family would be ruined, because our family's reputation had gone up in the community because he had come into our house and because he was teaching me. Our status, so to say, had gone up. If association with the guy can bring up your status, then a problem with him can definitely lower it, and would have definitely lowered it, and it would have made it different for the kids to get married, to find matches, to get husbands and wives. And so they told me that if anybody found out that there was any kind of problem between him and us, the kids would never be able to get married. And they said stuff about me too, my reputation, blah, 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 but I didn't care about that. I only cared about the fact that the kids would never be able to get married, and it would be my fault. This is what I'm being told.
Oh my gosh, this is so backwards. The person who abused you now is putting it on you, essentially, not directly, but now it's on you to keep that secret and to not expose him, because then it'll further hurt your reputation and apparently your family's reputation. That is so wrong.
Yes, it's a really big problem, and it's not a specific thing to my family. That's typically how it is. The honor of the whole family is on the shoulders of the women, specifically.
And he blamed you, didn't he?
He did. He actually, after he had done that marriage contract and the abuse had already started, he told me, well, he actually, one time he took out pictures of his wife and showed me.
He's married.
I don't know why. Yeah, he was married. She didn't live in America at the time, but I don't know why he did that. He was showing me these pictures of his wife and told me I was his second wife. And I was like, okay. And then he told me, he was like, do you know why I picked you? And I was like, no. And he said that it was because he had seen me doing dishes in the mosque, and I was holding my sleeve like this with my finger while I was putting a plate away. Whenever I would reach like this, like I would put one finger down to hold my sleeve so that when I would reach, my sleeve wouldn't go like this. I always held it down. So he was like, yeah, you seduced me with your modesty. He literally said that I seduced him with my modesty by holding my sleeve down like this while I was reaching.
Aggravated. This whole thing. So you can't win. If your sleeve would have fallen, it would have been you seduced me with your forearm.
Yeah.
And now it's you seduced me because you were being modest.
Exactly. It's a catch-22, because any of the other girls in the community that were like trying to like maybe like tight, like break like little tiny like rules, like as a normal teenage girl or boy or anybody should absolutely do, to find their like place in the world and everything. But if anybody would see them doing that, even if they would just be standing on the front porch, and let's say a girl would just have her hijab on, but it would be hanging like this down instead of clipped because nobody's around. She's like on her own front porch. But if somebody would see that, and I'm specifically saying this because it's something that happened. Somebody saw one of the girls from the community standing on her own front porch, and her hijab was on, but it wasn't clipped. And nobody was supposed to be around. But because somebody happened to see that, it was this big scandal. Why are you letting your daughter outside without her hijab? Was she out there to attract a neighbor boy? All kinds of stuff. And they actually had to get her married off because of that. Like within weeks after that happened, she was married off. There was another girl in the community who got caught sneaking out and taking her hijab off completely while she was out. And she was my friend. And when she got caught for that, they sent her away to another state to be a second wife to an old man who owned a business. So yeah, there was no winning. It didn't matter if you were breaking a rule or following a rule. It was just going to be whatever the men wanted to do.
So what did your aunt and uncle say about this marriage contract? Were they like, well, that doesn't count, or we need to figure that out in the eyes of Allah, or like, how does that work?
Because there were no witnesses, it should have been invalidated. But because everything any of us knew about religion, we learned from him. I don't remember him making anything up, but I feel like he must have had some kind of answer for that or some kind of reasoning. I think at that point in time, they were more concerned about the photos not getting out, nobody finding out that anything had happened because he left our house. So they decided that I was going to have to start going, because after he left our house, he started teaching Islamic school again. And they were like, you're going to have to go back to Islamic school or people are going to know that there's a problem and we can't have anybody knowing there's a problem. So I had to start going back to his classes again. And it was the absolute worst situation. It was so horrible to have to do that. And knowing that they knew.
They sent you back to this abuser. How did he treat you after that?
Well, my aunt went with me. I never had to go alone. So she had started going with me, and she was very protective. She never left my side. She didn't let him get anywhere near me, but he kept catching me in the parking lot. He would catch me as we were leaving because the way the parking lot was set up, there was no like private way to go. Everybody went in the same way. He would catch me in the parking lot in front of everybody. He would give me these wrapped boxes, gifts, and I would get in the car, and it was the only time I really had to talk to him. And I would get in the car and then we would get home and I would open it and it would be like lingerie. And he's giving me this. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was wrapped, like nobody could see it, but like the fact that he's giving me this at the mosque in front of everybody, wrapped or not. So then after the second time I knew what it was. So it's just like this constant fear. Oh my God, like I felt like everybody there could see through the box.
Yeah.
I felt like everybody had like x-ray vision, or like everybody knew. I felt like when everybody looked at me, like they would just know, like they would just like see it on me somehow. Like I was so
mortified.
Yeah, it was horrible.
The audacity of this man.
The audacity, yeah, exactly.
Because there's no consequences, because he's never been put in his place.
That's really what it was. I really think that him getting caught like that, like to where there was no question because he was literally caught and then getting away with it, I feel like that emboldened him
right.
later on, because over the years, I used to follow him on social media and he teaches kids camps. He would have, at the time when this happened to me, I had never seen him touch a woman, and it would have been scandalous if that had happened. But after I already was out of this situation, I would see him posting pictures on social media and he would be standing with girls that are not any kind of relation to him, and he would have his hands on their shoulders like this, and there was pictures of him sitting on the bed in a little girl's bedroom in somebody's house. And what I did, like one time, like I got really triggered. I was gone and I was out and everything. I would try to tell these communities where he was going to do a kids class or something like that, because he travels around a lot, and so he's always at these new places. And so I would contact them and I would try to be like, listen, I'm not involving outsiders, but I'm just telling you directly, don't let him be alone with children. Just don't do it. I'm not telling you not to have him. I'm just telling you. And then nobody ever listened to me. They always hung up on me. So this one time, like I actually got drunk because I was really triggered. And I will say that this is not a proud moment in my life. It was a pretty dark time at that moment. I was really triggered. Is before I'd gone to therapy, and at that moment I just wanted to do anything to not have to think about this. And what I did was I drank, which made it much, much worse. Instead of not thinking about it, it just made me hyper focus on it. And at the time I still had a certain form of social media, and I went on his page. His profile picture was a picture of him holding the hand of a little 5-6-year-old girl wearing a hijab. And he doesn't have children. He has no children. And I like commented on that photo, and I don't even remember what I said because I had some wine. But I did it from my own account, like my real, actual account, which was so stupid and so dangerous. And they just took it off, blocked me. Then they cropped the picture because he has admins and stuff. I doubt he did it himself. Then they just cropped the picture to remove the child, but it's the same photo. You just can't see the kid anymore. And so what he did after that, and this is really wild, is, and I didn't find this out for a couple years after because I ended up reading about it online. What he did within the couple years after that, he went to a community in one state and got appointed as a trustee on their board, stole all their money, and then used that money to start a charity, which is just a group of Muslim lawyers. So he then became essentially untouchable. Like once he started that group of lawyers, I knew that I could never again come after him or try to expose, say what happened. I would always have to be anonymous, with even more fear than I already had, just from the fact that his followers are fanatics, are like fundamentalists. And then one of the people who he did that from actually wrote an article about it. I found it on Medium of all places, and they had put hyperlinks in with all the court documents. So I was reading all these court documents, and that was the moment when I realized, he's not just, because for a long time I thought he had made this mistake. I didn't think of him as a predator for many years. I just thought this thing had happened somehow, and I couldn't explain to myself how. I didn't like him, but I didn't think he was like evil. But then when I found out about when his response to me trying to tell people was to do that, and then I found out about it, I was like, okay, yeah, there's something wrong with this person's psyche. This is a dangerous person who needs control and will do anything to have it.
I think part of that, and this is, of course, complete speculation, I could be wrong, but I feel like part of the reason you may have felt like it was just a one-time thing and he's not a predator is because of all of the blame and shame that you received as it was your fault or you did something wrong. And so you probably internalized that to some degree instead of putting all of the blame where it belonged, which was fully on him.
Yeah, absolutely. And also because child marriage is allowed in Islam. It was a standard in the community that I was in at the time. Temporary marriage is allowed. That is a part of the Shia religion. So I'm not saying that everybody does that. Absolutely, not all people do that, but it's definitely part of it. It is allowed. And so it was hard for me to find my anger because I had to let go of Islam before I could find my anger.
Yeah.
Because as long as I believed in Islam, well, Islamically, nothing bad happened to me. Everything that happened is allowed. Yeah, second wives are allowed. Child marriage is allowed. And because technically, once he said that marriage contract, nobody can, it might be in bad taste. People might not like it. But technically, Islamically,
he didn't do anything
he didn't abuse me because he was my husband.
And you can't say no.
And he gave me that $1 after all, He bought me for $1 whole. So
it's disgusting.
Nothing bad happened.
Wow.
So I had to first let go of Islam and my beliefs that these things were correct even if I wasn't following them anymore before I could find my anger and put into perspective, this was abuse. It wasn't a mistake. It was all those things that took a really long time.
Did your aunt and uncle ever sit you down and have a conversation with you and talk about what Imam did was wrong? Or did they say he slipped? Or did they say be more modest next time? Or what did that look like? Or did they avoid it altogether?
So my aunt passed away shortly after I was disowned. At the time, I never got to go back and have a now conversation, unfortunately. At the time when it happened, she told me that she almost lost her faith because of it. She was so upset about it. My uncle, I thought was upset about it, but later on, I found out after I was an adult, the first time that I was going to go and try to do something about this. And I went to the kids to be like, listen, this happened and I'm sorry. And I don't want any of this to come back on you, but I can't hold this in anymore.
Yeah.
At that time, I found out that after I had left and after my aunt died, my uncle took a second wife while she was dying of cancer and brought this third wife, actually, I'm sorry, because he already had a wife and my aunt was his second wife. So that would be the third wife. He pretended like he was upset. And then I found out later that after my aunt died, he was basically buddy-buddy with Imam again, just like nothing happened, having him over and all that kind of stuff. Because it was, he has a higher standing in the community if he's with this guy. So
speechless over here.
But I know for a fact my aunt was very upset about it. She went along with what we decided to do, but then again, so did I. We were both indoctrinated.
This conversation was incredible. We actually ended up speaking for 2 hours. I didn't want to cut it short, so I'm going to leave this interview here. In the next part that is coming out very shortly, don't worry, we're going to get into what it was like becoming a child's bride at 15, what it was like being married to a very abusive man who had very high expectations of her, how she was able to escape when she was 18 and then slowly reintroduce herself into the world, and years later deconstruct Islam. So if you want to hear her Linda listen, that will be in the second episode. Please remember to leave those kind words of encouragement down below. It really means a lot to the guests. It means a lot to us. It helps boost the algorithm. Everybody wins. Like, share, all of those things are incredibly helpful so more people can become aware of these things that are going on and become more compassionate to those who have left high control groups. If you want to support the podcast even further, we do have a Patreon at patreon.com/cults2consciousness. You can also support by getting some of our merch at cults2consciousness.com under the merch tab. We are working on renovating some of that, so stick around for some holiday drops. And we are going to Mexico if you want to come with us to a vacation. We're so excited to meet you guys in real life. It's so much fun to travel together and to get to know you all, people who watch the show, people who are just interested in meeting other people who have similar backgrounds. The trip to Costa Rica was incredible. This time we're going to Mexico. It's going to be very beachy, waterfalls, snorkeling, lots of fun stuff. The itinerary is in the description. We have a Clips channel if you are interested in checking out other episodes you may have missed. They're about 8 to 10 minutes in length. That is also in the description. If you like this video, I'll link 2 more down here below for you to check out. Make sure to keep your eyes open for part 2. Hit that bell, that subscribe button so you don't miss it. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.